Good evening and welcome to the April 22nd, 2025 meeting of the Spakenville Union Free School District Board of Education. I'd ask that you rise and recite the Pledge of Allegiance with me.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Item 2.01 is comments from the public on consent agenda items only. Do we have any public comment on consent agenda items? Any board discussion on consent agenda? Some poll discussed. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda as written. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, passes 5-0. That brings us to 4.01. This is the BOCES administrative budget for 2025-2026. So the trustee or board of education of each component school district by resolution may cast one vote to approve or disapprove the Board of Cooperative Educational Services administrative budget in the amount of $6,858,000. Does the board wish to approve? If you do, say aye, and if you wish to disapprove, say nay.
Aye.
Aye. So it passes 5-0. That brings us to 4.02. This is the BOCES candidate election vote. So there are 2 seats for 3-year terms beginning July 1st, 2025 and ending June 30th, 2028. And 1 seat to fill a vacancy with the term beginning April 23rd, 2025 and ending June 30th, 2026. On the Board of Cooperative Educational Services to be filled at the annual election to be held on April 22nd, 2025. The trustees or Board of Education of each component school district by resolution may cast 1 vote for each vacancy to be filled and only 1 vote for each candidate. A maximum of 3 votes may be cast in this election. No more than 1 person residing in a particular component school district may be elected to serve on the Board of Cooperative Educational Services at one time, except as provided in Education Law, Section 1915, subsection 2-A. I'm going to read the 5 candidates that are listed on the ballot in order that they're listed on the ballot. We have Ralph Chimento from Spakenville. We have Mark Fleischauer from Rhinebeck. We have Bryce Holland from Poughkeepsie. We have Judy Moran from Weebatuck, and we have Billy Stanford for Hyde Park. So I guess what I would do is ask the board, we'll start out just in that same order with Ralph. If the board has, wants to nominate or elect Ralph as one of our reps, then I guess what we'll do is we can just say aye. And if you don't, I guess we would say nay. So why don't we just go right down the line for Ralph Chimento?
Aye.
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 And I'll vote aye as well. Mark Fleischauer from Rhinebeck.
Nay.
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 Okay, nay. Bryce Holland from Poughkeepsie.
Aye.
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 I said aye on that one as well. Judy Moran from Weebatuck.
Nay.
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 Okay, and Billy Stanford from Hyde Park.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Okay, so that's Ralph Chimento, Bryce Holland, and Billy Stanford as Spakenville. Oh, I'm sorry, I thought I said that. Correct. Thank you. Apologize. Okay, so that's that then. That will bring us to item 6.01, Science Research Symposium, the presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having us here. Before we start the presentation on science research, I just want to mention a couple things. Number one, today is Earth Day, so just want to take a moment to reflect on our planet and take action and do what we can to protect our environment for future generations. It's important. We honored that today at school. We wore green, and we try to do our part with students as well. So I just wanted to mention that here today since it is Earth Day. Next, this weekend is The Little Mermaid. Hopefully everyone's got their tickets. It is a lot of people are looking forward to it. The work that has gone into it is massive. The set looks amazing. I would definitely suggest that you go attend it. 7 o'clock Friday, 7 o'clock Saturday, and 2 o'clock Sunday. So just keep that in mind. We have roughly 50 elementary students in the cast as well as high school students. So it's a big part of the community and a lot of involvement and a lot of work, and it's going to be fantastic. A lot of talent, so keep that in mind. So I want to start off just mentioning the Science Symposium based out of Science Research, a program that we have at the high school run by Miss Jen Maloney, who is here with us, and Miss Christine Upright behind me, our two science teachers. What this program is, if you're not familiar with it, is a 3-year research-based program, project-based, where students and families get involved in topics sophomore year that are interesting to them, and they pursue research partnered up with mentors throughout the world, typically PhD level mentors in different universities and colleges that our teachers work to facilitate relationships with them based on student interest, and they partner up with them over the course of 3 years and conduct research locally and in tandem with the mentors in their universities. And they present their senior years at the Research Symposium, which takes place on May 21st. That's a Wednesday at 6 o'clock p.m. Part of the reason why we do this is to try to get the word out and get participation from our community. It is open to the public. There's a lot of great information, a lot of really up-and-coming research that is not only interesting to the students conducting it, but it affects all of us today. And it's really fascinating to hear what our keynotes have to say and hear the research that students have been working on for 3 years, and some oftentimes more than that. We've in the past had students publish their research, and we continue to have that success now. So we hope to see everybody, and we hope that the community comes out and attends too. So we have 2 presenters here tonight. I do want to just mention the other senior projects that will be presented as well, the topics. Hopefully I don't destroy some of the topics. I was an English major, not a science major, so I'll do my best. But Naman Kukredi, with the mentorship of Dr. De Satis at Marist College. His research is based on comparing students' test scores to ChatGPT test scores to determine if ChatGPT could be used as cybersecurity personal assistant. So right there, obviously, ChatGPT is such a recent development in AI, and obviously it's interesting to not only our students but staff, and it's great that we'll get to see how that can play a role in cybersecurity. Brody Harity, with mentorship from Jen Adams at Winnicke Land Trust in Rhinebeck, New York. The topic is native versus invasive species and deer appetites at Vlay Marsh. If you can't tell, there's a very broad range of topics, and it's all based on student interest and what they want to research. I will give you an opportunity to come up and say anything if you want to. Yusuf Ahmed, again with the mentorship of Jen Adams at Winnicke Land Trust in Rhinebeck. This study investigates changes in moth biodiversity and species abundance in the Hudson Valley to determine ecosystem health within the Hudson Valley. Tricia Pinuli, Dr. Andrew Westbrook at Rutgers University, the effect of ADHD medication use in healthy young adults. And lastly, senior Misha Parsons with mentorship from Dr. Debian Mitra at Columbia University, the use of laser cooling for the excitation of calcium hydroxide production to explore particle physics. Very broad range. We also have our underclassmen, our 10th grade and 11th?
Yes.
Yeah, they also present their research as it stands at that symposium. So we get to see the progress along the way with the non-seniors in the school at the symposium as well. So there's a lot to see there. Please join us. Ready? Our presenters that are here are going to stand at the board because they have a slide, so they're going to be able to point to that. And we'll start with Miss Jacqueline Gill, and I'll give you an opportunity to speak about your research and your mentor.
Come on up. Go around the circle.
So my name is Jacqueline Gill. My mentor is Dr. Robin Yan, affiliated with Brigham and Women's Hospital through Harvard Medical School. So my study was the effect of sleep on emotional regulation in adolescents. So 70% of high schoolers in the United States report inadequate sleep, and this lack of sleep can cause poor concentration, increased anxiety, a decline in both academic and athletic performance, as well as increasing the likelihood of developing anxiety, schizophrenia, and other mood disorders. Adolescents are children aged 13 to 19, and they're at a higher risk for developing both sleep problems and other emotional risks. Emotional regulation, abbreviated as ER, is an individual's ability to control their emotions. In 2003, Floyd et al. Found that a lack of sleep was correlated with enhanced negative reactions and fewer positive reactions to various stimuli. In 2007, Baglioni et al. Found that a lack of sleep caused a higher frequency of negative emotions and a lower frequency of positive emotions throughout the week. And Van Dekkerhoff in 2017 tied these studies together when he conducted a study on med students and found that even after a goal-achieving event, which in this case was graduating med school, lack of sleep caused diminished positive reactions after goal-achieving. The Positive and Negative Effect Schedule for Children, or the PNASC, is a self-report questionnaire that helps quantify a participant's emotional state throughout the time frame, which in my case was 1 week. So they rate 5 positive emotions: joyful, cheerful, happy, lively, proud, on a scale from 1 to 5 based on frequency. 1 being they felt that emotion not at all throughout the week, and 5 being it was almost a constant emotion. And those numbers are added up to calculate their total positive effects. Similarly, they also rate 5 negative emotions, 1 through 5, miserable, mad, afraid, scared, sad. And those numbers are added up to form their total negative effects. The Nenke Affective Picture System, or NAPS, is an image set meant to elicit an emotional response from the viewer, and it's often paired with a nonverbal pictorial questionnaire, which in this case I used SAM, and it's these little graphs that you see here, and they quantify 2 variables for each image. First, pleasure, or how positively or negatively they perceived an image. So they would choose the icon that corresponded most to how positively or negatively they viewed the image. There was also a variable for the intensity of the emotion, where they were able to choose how strong of a reaction they were having to each image. The prefrontal cortex is the part of the brain responsible for emotional regulation and problem solving. However, it's not fully developed until a person's early to mid-20s, causing research results from adults, like the ones I mentioned, from Floyd et al., Baglioni et al., and Dekkerhoff, to not necessarily translate to adolescents. Because of this, my objective was to investigate the effect of sleep on emotional regulation in adolescents using the adolescents from Spackman School. I hypothesized that if participants had a shorter duration of sleep, on their PNAS-C forms they would report a higher negative effect and a lower positive effect. And in regards to the NAPS images with the SAM questionnaire, I hypothesized that they would have a higher intensity of negative emotions and a lower intensity of the images that they rated more positively. So the first step in my research was to recruit participants. So by word of mouth and through surveys, I was able to recruit my participants to take in the study. I also had an IRB meeting in order to make sure that my study was safe for the underage participants to participate in. I collected demographics such as age and gender through Google Forms, and I had to rule out any participants that had conditions that could affect their sleep or their emotional regulations, including diabetes, schizophrenia, severe diagnosed anxiety, and other. I collected my sleep data in 2 phases. Phase 1 occurred in July of 2024, and Phase 2 occurred in September of 2024. Both phases were executed the exact same way, where participants recorded their sleep information through Google Form for 1 week, and this included the time they went to bed, the time they woke up, how long it took for them to fall asleep, any wake-ups throughout the night, and any other information they wanted to share. After the 1 week of recording their sleep data, they completed an emotional regulation task Google Form, where they completed both the PNAS-C, and they had 32 NAPS images that were provided by my mentor, filled with a SAM questionnaire for each image. Statistical analysis was then run on the information. I ran Pearson correlations on the PNAS-C data and linear regressions on the NAPS and SAM data, and p-values less than 0.05 were considered significant. For my demographics, I had 141 total participants, with their ages ranging from 13 to 19, with an average age of about 16.5. I had 102 female participants. And I decided to look at the sleep data compared to the emotional regulation data in 2 ways. Their total average sleep over the whole week, and just the sleep their night before they completed their emotional regulation tasks. Because there was a big discrepancy in age, gender, and the amount of people for phases, before I completed my statistical analysis, I decided to look at trends in Excel to make sure there weren't any significant differences based on other factors. And I found that there weren't any significant differences based on other factors, but I did find something very interesting in tables 4 and 5. The highest R-squared values, or correlation values, ranging from 0 to 1, 0 being no correlation, 1 being a strong correlation. For both males and females, the highest correlation occurred between average sleep and the emotional regulation data, whereas the lowest correlation values occurred with night before sleep data. While this wasn't necessarily what I was looking to find in my hypothesis, it does indicate that long-term sleep has a higher correlation with emotional regulation than short-term sleep. When I was analyzing the PNAS-C data compared to my sleep data, the only statistically significant p-values I had were with the average sleep data, which you can see highlighted in green on the right side. So as you can see, each black dot represents a participant's score, and the blue line indicates the trend line. I'm not sure if you can tell from there, but based on the dots, there's no clear way, if you didn't have that blue line there, to show a correlation. And this is evident in my Pearson correlation values, which again range from 0 to 1, 0 being a lack of correlation and 1 being a strong correlation. My R values were less than 0.24, and my p-values were statistically significant. And what this means is that the lack of correlation between the sleep and the PNAS-C data is likely not due to chance, and there's factors besides sleep that impact an adolescent's emotional regulation. In these figures down here, figures 5 and 6, this correlates the NAPS-SAM data and the sleep data. So these navy circles are a correlation of 1, the orange circles represent a correlation of about 0.3, the blue indicates a correlation of about 0.2, and the yellow indicates a correlation of about 0.1. As you can see, my R-squared values are less than 0.005 for both average sleep and night before sleep. And when we combine this very lack of correlation with the p-values, it means that the lack of correlation between the variables is likely not due to chance. So this led me to conclude that factors other than sleep impact emotional regulation in adolescents. But I wasn't content with just stopping saying that there were other factors. So my mentor and I began to look into why there was a lack of correlation and what we could do to figure out why in the future. So first off, I had already found that long-term sleep had a higher correlation with emotional regulation than short-term. So for future studies, we want to record their sleep for longer than a week prior to giving them the emotional regulation tasks. In addition, lots of literature points to emotional differentiation in adolescents. And this means that adolescents aren't always able to correctly identify the emotions that they are having. So one way to go about this is to instruct them how to identify their emotions prior to them participating in this study. In addition, there's been a lot of research on adolescents about their desensitization to stimuli due to things like social media, certain video games, and movies. And this has caused their reactions to the NAPS images to be less severe than they used to be when the scale was first created due to the desensitization of stimuli in kids in this age. In addition, the biggest thing that my mentor and I were talking about are circadian rhythms, which are essentially your biological clock, and it determines at what point in your sleep you hit the REM cycle and how long it lasts. So each adolescent has their own unique circadian rhythm because circadian rhythms develop during your adolescence. So this could mean that comparing adolescents' sleep versus emotional regulation data across multiple adolescents is not really an accurate way of doing that if their circadian rhythms are different. So you'd have to use the same adolescent and look at how they regulate their emotions when they have about 5 hours of sleep compared to like 10 hours of sleep in order to get a better idea. In addition, we could use electroencephalography in order to determine what parts of a teenager's brain are actually used in emotional regulation since their prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed. Thank you for listening. Does anyone have any questions?
So it's not just sleep.
Yeah.
Any idea what else? Like will affect the food or anything of that nature?
Yeah, so the question was, if not sleep, what other factors impact an adolescent's emotional regulation? So I think it's more so their circadian rhythm as that aspect of sleep, but it's also then what other emotional factors are going on in their day, whether they had like a physical activity, and just whether they've been exposed to different techniques to help regulate their emotions, because some people have been exposed to more ways on how to calm themselves down or how to like react to more difficult situations.
I found it interesting how you found that the reaction to stimuli might be different now since that approach came out years ago. That's very interesting. I was looking at pictures and things all the time, and maybe that specific type of test isn't as valid. That's interesting. You wouldn't think that, you know? It's really fun. Anyone else? Getting off easy? Thank you so much. Thank you.
Another piece to the presentation is all the public speaking work that goes into this. So the students spend a lot of time, and the teachers work with them, and they work through the speeches numerous times. Obviously, they memorize, and they work on question and answer scenarios, as Dr. Fanielli asked the question. Jacqueline repeated the question for the audience. So all that goes into presentation and public speaking to kind of expand beyond science. Next presenter is Katie Park. Come on up, and I'll give you the opportunity to talk about your research.
Hello, my name is Katie Park. My mentor is Dr. Pina Arata, affiliated with the CUNY Graduate Center, and my research is on the impact of stress and amyloidosis on microglial phenotypes. Microglia is the brain's primary immune cell containing countless healthy and necessary functions. However, more recent studies have pointed at it being a causal cell in Alzheimer's disease, or AD, a neurodegenerative disease primarily causing mental decline. For example, variants of microglia-specific gene TREM2 has increased Alzheimer's risk several-fold. In addition, the binding of amyloid beta, a process common in Alzheimer's, to protein complex C1q leads to synapse loss, a symptom prevalent in Alzheimer's. In the context of AD, microglia possesses a dark phenotype, identified by its uniformly dark chromatin as outlined in the blue. It also presents altered organelles, so there is intracellular change as well. And this is in comparison to intermediate and typical cells found in healthier patients, where a more distinct chromatin pattern within the nucleoplasm or the blue outline is present. One mechanism discovered in dark microglia is called the integrated stress response pathway, or ISR, where in response to various pathological or environmental conditions, stresses are detected by these four enzymes. ISR activation was specifically found to induce dark microglia. So why is this important? Since Alzheimer's disease is 1 out of 10 top leading causes of death in the United States without a cure, using this dark phenotype may potentially be a good identification marker for the disease. So the objective of my study was to ultrastructurally, or by looking at the fine structures of cells, determine whether microglial stress, as activated by the integrated stress response pathway, and amyloidosis, a process causing amyloid beta, exacerbates the dark phenotype. I studied 3 different mice genotypes. IPCAR was a stress model, 5XFAD was an amyloidosis model, and 5XFAD IPCAR was a combination of both stress and amyloidosis. Next, brain tissue samples were prepared, specifically the isocortex, since it had been found to be correlated with a lot of cognitive functions. My role began with image analysis, where I annotated over 180 images of cell bodies and reviewed them 5 times, annotating them using a software called PhotoP. And then to objectively create chromatin contrast scores, I used a software Fiji by highlighting a heterochromatin or dark outer skirt of the cell and subtracting that from the euchromatin or lighter inner areas of the cell body. I also annotated for the 2 Alzheimer hallmarks called amyloid beta plaques as well as dystrophic neurites. And then to look intracellularly, I looked at the organelles, mitochondria, and lysosomes. Next, for data normalization, I created several equations to account for the different number of cells and pathologies across the 3 genotypes. That way they could be compared for the results. So going into the results, looking at the chromatin contrast ranges, I correlated the 0 to 20 mean intensity with the dark phenotype, 20 to 40 for intermediate, and 40 to 70 for typical. This visually makes sense as the dark phenotype appears more uniformly dark, thus it has the least contrast. Specifically, the smaller 30 to 40 mean intensity, where the histogram peaks in the middle, indicates the bona fide intermediate phenotype and also suggests that imaging may have been biased for the intermediate cells. Shifting our focus to the graph on the right, unexpectedly the 5XFAD or amyloidosis model had the highest dark microglial numbers as well as the lowest typical microglial percentages, suggesting amyloidosis may be a crucial factor for dark microglial numbers. In addition, since no dark microglia was induced within the IPCAR stress model, stress alone could not induce this phenotype. However, a limitation to account for is the amount of stress because apoptosis or cell death cannot be induced. Looking into Alzheimer hallmark analysis, the greatest percentage of microglia contacting plaques out of the total number of cells were intermediate within the 5XFAD genotype. Similarly, the greatest percentage of microglia contacting plaque out of the total number of cells contacting some sort of amyloid beta pathology were also intermediate. Thus, amyloidosis exacerbates the intermediate phenotype. However, more notably, within the 5XFAD IPCAR cells, only the dark phenotype had any contact with plaque. Thus, the combination of amyloidosis with stress potentially intensifies the dark phenotype even more. In neurites, though fewer cells and neurites were intermediate, this may have been due to more neurites being dark instead. 53.8% of microglia contacting neurites were intermediate, and then looking to the right, 87.5% of 5XFAD IPCAR cells were also intermediate. So for plaque, stress intensified the dark phenotype, but for neurites, stress intensified the intermediate phenotype. And this was significant because this supports a 2022 study that no dark microglia would be found without the presence of amyloid beta plaques and neurites nearby. And my study further supported this since no typical microglia were near those hallmarks. For organelle analysis, the highest levels of mitochondria is present within dark phenotypes, with around 30 at least doubling if not quadrupling the number in typical cells. For lysosome content, the dark and intermediate microglia levels had comparable ranges of lysosomes with a range of 1 to 1.6, and this was comparatively non-existent within typical cells. Overall, suggesting that the dark and intermediate microglia possess more indigestible components, creating a greater energy demand that the cell needs to compensate for, with more mitochondria, and also digest those components with more lysosomes in order for cellular survival. So in conclusion, stress and amyloidosis exacerbates both the dark and intermediate phenotypes, and this is important because we could potentially modulate this ISR or integrated stress response pathway as an Alzheimer interventional method in the future. Thank you for listening. Are there any questions?
What made you pursue this topic?
The question was what made me pursue this topic, and my grandfather had Alzheimer's disease, so that's where the interest was.
How has that helped you explain some of the stuff to your family and things like that? How has those two all the information you learned and the passion, knowing about the background of the family, how did that contribute?
The question was, how did this passion help? How was I able to spread the information to my
Yeah, how did
family?
it help you and your family understand?
I think it was more of, I wanted to make some sort of contribution to that Alzheimer field, because although a lot of research does go into it, there is still no cure. So I wanted to make some sort of impact that way. But other than that, I do try to explain it. I don't know how much they understand, but
I think that's amazing. That's a great gift. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so again, this is Wednesday, the 21st at 6 o'clock, right?
Yep.
6 o'clock. Every symposium starts off with a keynote speaker. So I do want to mention who our keynote speaker is this year. And again, we hope to see some community members come out and experience the research that our students have spent years developing. So we're honored to announce that Dr. Paul Ryder will be the keynote speaker at this Back and Kill Research Symposium. Dr. Ryder is currently a member of the faculty at Princeton University, where his research focuses on developing new treatments for malaria, tuberculosis, and other neglected diseases. His career spans more than 3 decades of groundbreaking work in both academia and pharmaceutical industry. During his 28 years in the industry, Dr. Ryder made direct contributions to the discovery, development, or registration of 14 FDA-approved drugs. From 2002 to 2007, he served as the worldwide head of chemistry research and discovery at Amgen. Dr. Ryder holds an AB in psychology from New York University and a PhD in organic chemistry from the University of Vermont. After postdoctoral work at Colorado State University, he began a 22-year tenure track at Merck, eventually rising to vice president of process chemistry. His prolific career includes over 170 scientific publications, numerous patents, and a host of prestigious honors, including the 2011 National Academy of Sciences Award for Chemistry in Service to Society. Beyond his research, he has served on advisory boards and editorial committees for leading institutions and journals, and currently sits on the scientific advisory boards of Medicines for Malaria, Venture, and the TB Alliance. We're thrilled to welcome him. We're hoping, and most likely is going to be a pretty fascinating conversation that we'll experience there. So we hope to see you there. And at this time, I will have Ms. Maloney, Ms. Upright say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you very much for supporting our students today and giving them the opportunity to share their research with you. Is this on? Yeah. We have 26 students in the science research class, and I'm sure each and every one of them would love to see you at the symposium. But if for some reason you're not able to come, we post a Google site every year. And on that Google site, the students record their posters, or they record their slideshow presentations so that you can have an opportunity to see them, even after the symposium. We also include interviews with alumni, Back and Kill alumni. So we have gathered, I'd say about 6 maybe this year, maybe 7? 5 this year. So we have 5 interviews with a past science research alumni. But there are also links on the Google site to the previous years and interviews with other alumni as well about the program and how it has helped them and what they are doing in college now. So we'd really love to see you, but thank you very much again for having us today. We really appreciate your time. And the students have invitations for you if you would like to. And it's been wonderful working with Mrs. Upright. She's been a great addition to the program, and the program's only getting stronger with her by my side.
Thank you, and Great job, Katie and Jacqueline.
Mr. Lewis, how did you secure that speaker? That's an amazing, I know you know, but that's, is that common every year to have someone with that bio?
Probably not as intense as that, but we have had some amazing speakers. We've had some great speakers from Carey Institute, from Vermont, from all over. Last year was Yale. Yeah, last year was Yale. So we try to get speakers that would be a mentor of the student. So we asked the students to invite their mentor, but we had an opportunity to get Dr. Paul Ryder, and we jumped on that.
Very good, thank you so much.
Thanks.
Just a reminder, go see Little Mermaid.
Yeah.
Have to plug it.
Okay, that brings us to item 7.01, board correspondence. We did get some emails from some of the Duchess BOCES candidates, and I will say we had to choose three. It was a difficult decision. We really commend all the efforts of all five for volunteering their time and for the sacrifices they made, the time with their family, the time with their jobs, whatever else they may be sacrificing in order to serve for all the districts in Dutchess County. We really appreciate all those efforts, and we appreciate their willingness to make those sacrifices, so thank you to all of them. 7.02, comments from the public on non-agenda items. Let's see what the public here. Move on to 703, comments from the board. Any comments from the board? Okay, 704, comments from the superintendent.
Just, kind of already said it, but Mr. Lewis, thank you for that presentation. I mean, it's amazing the level of research that's being done by some of our students. And, you know, we don't often get a chance to see it. Sometimes the symposium is on a tough night. I think for Mr. Kohler and I think we have an engagement on that night, so we might not be able to make it. But the thought and the effort, you know, with those students is just amazing. I mean, some of the stuff we couldn't even ask a question on. And that was, it's amazing that our youngsters are doing that. So testimony to you and to all the teachers that do stuff. Also would say definitely Little Mermaid. It's probably, it's even sold out because I know it was pretty.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah, so, but definitely looking forward to that. The buzz around the building today was wearing their shirts and talking about it, so that's pretty cool coming into that. I liked what you did with Earth Day, with all the Earth balloons kind of around. That was definitely a nice touch. And just want to welcome everyone back. We had a nice break, a little later than usual. I think some of the holidays were a little later in the year. I think it doesn't always happen that way. So next year, I think our spring break is in March, or maybe right in the very end of March. So definitely the weather is definitely warmer this time around. Like usually it's sometimes it can be March and cold. So definitely great to be back, and we're ready for the stretch drive.
So that brings us to item 8.01. The board will take a vote to adjourn to executive session for the purpose of seeking legal advice for contract negotiations. After the executive session, the board does not anticipate any further business being conducted. Do I have a motion to adjourn into executive session? Do I have a second? All in favor?
But
Passes 5-0. We'll see you next time.